vidunoti sahasratam nashtaprayeshu apadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhavatir bhakti naishtaki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 31, Verse 19. Pashyati ayam dishanyananu saptavrati sharira kedama sharira apras svadehe yachrastayam tam aham purusham puranam pasye bahirhridi cha chaityam iva pratitam. Synonym: Pashyati sees, I am this living entity, Dishayana with intelligence, Nanu only, Saptavadri bound by the 7 layers of material coverings, Sharirake agreeable with disagreeable sense perceptions, Dhamma Shariri having a body for self-control, Apara another, Swadehe in his body, Yat by the Supreme Lord, Shrataya endowed, Asam was, Tam him, Aham I, Purusham person, Puranam oldest, Pashye see, Bahi outside, Hridi in the heart, Cha and Chaityam the source of the ego, Eva indeed, Pratitanam recognized. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: the living entity in another type of body sees only by instinct. He knows only the agreeable and disagreeable sense perceptions of that particular body. But I have a body in which I can control my senses and can understand my destination. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whom I have been blessed with this body, and by whose grace I can see him within and without. Purport: the evolutionary process of different types of bodies is something like that of a fructifying flower. Just as there are different stages in the growth of a flower, the bud stage, the blooming stage, and the full-fledged grown-up stage of aroma and beauty, similarly, there are 8,400,000 species of bodies in gradual evolution, and there is systematic progress from the lower species of life to the higher. The human form of life is supposed to be the highest, for it offers consciousness for getting out of the clutches of birth and death. The fortunate child in the womb of his mother realizes his superior position and is thereby distinguished from other bodies. Animals in bodies lower than that of the human being are conscious only as far as their bodily distress and happiness are concerned. They cannot think of more than their bodily necessities of life, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But in the human form of life, by the grace of God, the consciousness is so developed that a man can evaluate his exceptional position and thus realize the self and the Supreme Lord. The word Dhamma Shariri means that we have a body in which we can control the senses and the mind. The complication of materialistic life is due to an uncontrolled mind and uncontrolled senses. One should feel grateful to the Supreme Personality of Godhead for having obtained such a nice human form or body, and one should properly utilize it. The distinction between an animal and a man is that the animal cannot control himself and has no sense of decency, whereas the human being has the sense of decency and can control himself. If this controlling power is not exhibited by the human being, then he is no better than an animal. By controlling the senses or by the process of yoga regulation, one can understand the position of his self, the supersoul, the world, and their interrelation. Everything is possible by controlling the senses. Otherwise, we are no better than animals. Real self-realization by means of controlling the senses is explained herein. One should try to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead and one's own self also. To think oneself the same as Supreme is not self-realization. Here it is clearly explained that the Supreme Lord is Anadi or Purana, or he has no other cause. The living entity is born of the Supreme Godhead as part and parcel. It is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, Anadir Adir Govinda. The Supreme Person has no cause. He is unborn, but the living entity is born of him. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Mama Vamshe, both the living entity and the Supreme Lord are unborn, but it has to be understood that the supreme cause of the part and parcel is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Brahma Samhita therefore says that everything has come from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sarva Karana Karanam. The Vedanta Sutra confirms this also. Janmadi asya yata. The absolute truth is the original source of everyone's birth. Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. I am the source of birth of everything, including Brahma and Lord Shiva and the living entities. This is self-realization. One should know that he is under the control of the Supreme Lord and not think that he is fully independent. Otherwise, why should he be put in conditional life? Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Desha Tarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna. So this verse is really very packed. Srila Prabhupada is giving so many important messages through this verse. So right now we are in the section where the Jiva is offering prayers in the womb, offering prayers to the Supreme Lord. So this section just started now. And it will conclude with two more verses. With verse 22, it will conclude. So we have to understand that this Jiva that is offering prayer is actually, so it is not like sometimes we may just ask the question, right? So how is it that when it is said that a devotee will never come back, never take birth again, then how is this that this Jiva, a devotee Jiva is offering this prayer? Actually, to understand that is that this is the Jiva who has not completely fulfilled everything. Like it's in the process of bhakti process, but has not completely reached the end, like completely got the prema bhakti. So it is in the path of gradual spiritual progression. So this is the devotee Jiva that is offering. And it was also mentioned by the senior acharyas that this prayer is also by a specific jiva, like a devotee jiva, because every jiva, based on the progression of bhakti, the realizations are different. So here also it says that in the beginning verse, when it started, the verse 13 or something, it was like a general prayer. But then this specific jiva is also offering prayer based on the realization that it has. So in verse 18, it was explained that this jiva was offering prayer and said that it is due to the causeless mercy that he has this realization. And there was no way to express gratitude, but rather than to pray with folded hands. We just saw that yesterday. And then he's also acknowledging the mercy and expressing gratitude to the Lord and saying that it is really because of him that he's able to get that realization. And really the utmost humility was expressed when he was starting to offer that prayer. So now in this verse 19, right, like as we saw that there are different sections to it. So the first section here was that talking about the evolutionary process. Srila Prabhupada is explaining that there are 8,400,000 species. And then with gradual evolution, one gets to the form of human life. And also we have to understand, right? In Bhagavad Gita, it is explained very clearly. Even if we say it, if we say 8,400,000, right? But even in the human form, there are different levels of consciousness that is developed. So that is also being counted. Like, here also, like outside in the world, when we interact with people, can't we really like feel the consciousness, the interaction with different people? Like you can tell when somebody is highly elevated in the mode of goodness versus some who are really in the mode of passion and ignorance. And even the consciousness, how the interactions, the correspondence with everything, we are able to feel that difference. So that elevation of consciousness, right, is also what makes it kind of a difference. So even within the human form of life, based on the consciousness, there are different levels. Okay, so that's what it is. The progression of consciousness is the important part we have to understand. So in the first section, that is exactly what Prabhupada is explaining here. And then human form of life, I mean, exactly, like we don't really realize how fortunate we are. I think this message is coming over and over and over for us to realize that we are really very fortunate that we have the human form of life. On top of that, we got this good fortune of coming across a devotee who really gave us the message of Krishna consciousness. And here we are, waking up in the morning, 5 o'clock, we are reading about chanting. We are chanting all along and we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Again, for us, it may just feel like a routine, but if you really think about it, this is a very, very special opportunity that we all have right now and the position that we are in right now. So again, like this child in the womb is offering prayers and really realizing that what a huge opportunity I have been given, and offering gratitude to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? So that's really the main message here in the first section. And then Srila Prabhupada is really driving home this point very clearly, the distinction between animals and human. Animals really act upon based on their instincts, and we know that when they are hungry, they hunt for food. And that's about it. You don't find any bird, right? Like if you put some grains for the birds, they will just eat how much they want it. It's not like they're going to collect it and store it in bags and everything and store it for later. But whereas we saw humans, right? During COVID, packs and packs of food was being stored. Even without that also, anytime anything happens, human beings are always going overboard, trying to accumulate and trying to store so much for them. So they always go overboard. Whereas animals, they only act based on the instinct. If also, like you can see an example of a lion, when the lion is hungry, will hunt for a deer. But however, so, but then they also don't have the consciousness to think that, oh, if I hunt the deer, what will happen to his family? Will I affect the children? That so they don't have any of that consciousness, right? They just act based on the instinct. And also, once his stomach is full, then the lion is not going to go hurt any other deer at that point. And we can also see that sometimes there are deers grazing near a lion, but they know that the lion is already full, not going to hurt, right? So we can see that the animals in that way, they really perform based on the basic natural instinct. And that's what Srila Prabhupada is explaining here, right? Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Those are the four functions, and they really act based on that. But when we come to the human form of life, we get the intelligence, we get the thinking, all of that. So we are able to really function in a higher sense. And if we don't really, that's what Srila Prabhupada is saying, that then you're basically acting like like animals, sorry. And here also, I was thinking that when the material energy is so strong, I'm just talking in general, okay, like just outside in the world, how many people are really thinking higher than that? Maybe some of the moral values are there, but basically still everything is so much surrounding those four things: eating, mating, sleeping, and defending. So that's the main key point here. Then the second part over here is also where Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing about sense control. Again, this is a very important point to be like, even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that everything happens because of lust. So therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of lust by regulating the senses and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. So it is very important that if we have to progress in the path of bhakti, we do need to have a very good control of the senses. And when we talk about the senses, it's not just the five senses, but also the mind and intelligence. Because really, if the mind and intelligence is corrupted, it's going to really pollute everything. Because our actions, our senses, everything, whenever sense objects come in contact with the senses, the mind, everything just wants to enjoy. However, when we are taken into the path of bhakti, very important to understand that lust can be our very dangerous thing. So we have to be really in control of the senses and make sure that we don't get bound by all of this unwanted. And again, we have to really understand, we call about lust, right? And it is not like just because we have done so many years of practice of bhakti and this and that, and it's like, now guess what? Now I have become superpower and lust is not going to attack me and I can become all protective. It's not like that at all. Even till the end, always we have to be depending on Krishna's mercy, because it is very easy. The material energy is so strong. So we have to always be very, very careful and have our guards up, like be very watchful, because it's very easy to get into this control of the lust and everything else. So what's the solution, right? The more and more we chant, the more and more we get attracted to the lotus feet of Krishna. That is really good, is our savior. And the association of devotees, that's a big one, because alone we can never do anything. In fact, yesterday when I was at the temple also, I was talking to someone and they were saying that I try to do so much, but again and again, I feel that I'm not able to do it. I'm not able to continue what I want to do, because I feel really like kind of, like a little bit frustrated or little like kind of losing hope, like I'm not able to sustain it. Then I was like, you know what? The secret is really association of devotees, because alone you cannot do all this. Whereas when you come together, gather in a group of devotees, it's very easy, because the other devotees are going to really take you further, right? There are some days where you feel like maybe I don't want to chant. Maybe I can skip temple today, maybe. But you know what? You still get dressed up. You still go to the temple. You still attend Mangalarti. You still do everything. And then what happens is that just because you are there, the association uplifts you. You listen to the class, you associate with everyone, take prasadam, and then it's like your battery gets recharged, and then you just continue on with it. So yeah, I mean, dear devotees, really, that is the big secret, association of devotees. And of course, devotees are always talking about Krishna, chanting Krishna's names and all of that. So naturally, we are going to be in that. I think I got a little carried away by that topic. However, in a nutshell, I know we are already running out of time. But I also wanted to say that in the last section, the Jiva is also saying very clearly about the different positions of Krishna, as he is the super soul. He is also like the Chaityam. He is also everywhere. So he also talks about the three forms, like the Paramatma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and also Brahman. But in all of these forms, he's again saying very well, he's offering the prayers. He also makes a very good distinction here. In the other way to interpret by the Acharyas is that a jnani may learn about that and he may understand the difference between the soul and the body. But however, here this jiva in the womb is also offering the prayer. He's saying that I understand this. Plus, I also understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the bestower of everything, who has blessed all of this too. So that's the additional realization, right? Because usually we can see that the Gyanis may realize all the Sankhya and everything. But when we come to a devotee position, we also understand Krishna's hand in everything. So that's also the big prayer that is being offered. So in a nutshell, I just want to say that this prayer being offered by the Jiva to Supreme Personality of Godhead is really establishing four things. First, the Jiva clearly establishes the position of the Lord in various verses, explaining about the qualities of the Lord and how his position is. Then position of Jiva is established, where it says that I am, how helpless I am, and I am made up of the five elements, and how distressed condition I am, and all of that. And then the third part is the relationship between the Jiva and the Lord, right? Between where the Lord is perceived, by repentant heart, and also says that I'm completely dependent on your shelter, so that is the third section. And then the fourth is what is Jiva asking after doing all this? Sambandha Abhidaya Prayojan. And then what is Jiva asking? He's basically saying that please take me out of this abominable material condition. So he's saying not just out of the womb, but rather he's asking, take me out of the material existence, that I don't want to come back here again and again and take birth again and again. Please take me out of this, and also let me always remember you, never forget you anytime. So that's really very, very beautiful prayers offered by the Jiva.